Welcome to Before Showtime with Connor and Marcelo. This is Marcelo speaking.
And this is ConGod, and that is Cello Fellow.
Whoa, we got good nicknames, dude. I'm not gonna lie. How are you doing, Connor? How's your week going and stuff?
Solid, solid. I just had dinner with my dad at a great place in DC called the Founding Farmers. And earlier on, Anthony Jenkins, if you're listening, hello. We actually just recently got out of a screening of 2001: A Space Odyssey at the Alamo Drafthouse. Great experience.
Wow, how many times have you seen that film previously?
I've seen it about three other times.
Three other times. Dang. So like is this your
One of my
first time in
all-time
the big screen?
favorites. No, it's not. I actually saw it on. I saw it at Museum of the Moving Image out in Queens, and that was actually from a film print, so it was probably the ideal way for at least for me to experience that film. I was really blown away by that.
Wow, that's like a really cool experience too, because I think if we were gonna be honest, that's one of Kubrick's most celebrated films, even especially from
Easily.
people trying to get into directing movies, which I want to give a little backstory actually, Connor, because I think we're getting a lot of new viewers. We do have a TikTok now, so if anyone's into TikTok, be sure to follow us on Before Showtime Pod. Our main base is going to be on YouTube because this is where we're going to host our
Yeah.
longer form episodes. And then obviously Spotify for podcasting if anyone's more into audio based stuff. And I just want to give like a really quick value proposition for us, is because me and Connor are actually trying to go into the film industry. Do you want to go into that, Connor, and explain your little backstory here?
Yes, I'm trying to get in as a director and screenwriter. I am currently studying film as an undergrad at American University. And so I've been on several student film sets as a crew member, usually as a production assistant or script supervisor. So I'm trying to get some experience there. And I've loved film ever since a young age when I used to watch the special features on Pixar movies and watch documentaries on Jaws and the trouble production behind that. And so filmmaking is above anything my number one passion and goal.
Yeah, and just like a little about me too, I'm going to move to New York quite soon, trying to start my independent film career, working on smaller independent films because I'm not going to have the biggest budgets to make my projects, just to be realistic. But I'm trying to get really good artists from New York to try to, up my street cred in this, crazy and tumultuous industry.
And I'll
Uh,
be in Jersey by then, so we won't be too far.
yeah,
Who knows?
and
Maybe
Connor
I could end up
Connor
in the
starred in
credits.
Connor actually starred in one of my short films called A Trip Down Memory Lane.
Go watch
So
it.
we're kind of collaborating on that too. And I hope, dude, I hope in the future, Connor, if you ever get an opportunity to move to New York with me, we can do some damage. But I want to kind of go from this into this small movie called Rye Lane, which is the new independent rom-com that just came out of Great Britain, guys. It's not necessarily from the United States, so it doesn't come out of the Hollywood productions, but
Yes,
it's
it just
very easy to access right now. It is streaming on Hulu. So for those that have Hulu accounts, go check it out because I have to say, Connor, this was a really solid time. It's really
yes,
short
this
too.
was a fantastic film. I first heard about it thanks to the Oscar Expert and Brother Bro, which go subscribe to them. I watch them pretty religiously at this point, and they heavily praised the film when they saw it premiere at Sundance. And I think Brother Bro himself like even gave it a 10 out of 10 because it he just felt like so positive about the experience and felt like he was back in love with the art of making movies. And I kind of felt the same way. This is one of the best romantic comedies in years, probably of all time. I'll be completely honest.
Wow,
This,
that's
if
that's
I
really
feel
bold,
like,
dude. That's a bold
yeah,
take.
and easily a highlight to come out of Sundance so far this year, because this, like, my God, what a debut from Rain Allen Miller this was.
I,
Such
I
a
have to say
confident
the fisheye
feature.
lens visual aesthetic that this movie pulls off is exquisite to look at. The colors pop. I don't
It
know.
is,
I don't know if he
yeah.
used anamorphic lenses, but if I had to bet money on it, he definitely did because these colors look
Rain Allen Miller is
awesome
a
to
she,
me.
by the way.
Oh, it is a she. Okay, I didn't know
Yeah,
that, but This is a great debut on her end. What
Yes,
else can I say? I mean, the acting. My God, I don't know who
these
these
two,
performers are.
yeah,
They're awesome.
Vivian Opara and David Johnson are both just really fun and really charming and super likable as both these characters that have really good chemistry, and they don't. The thing I love about this film is not just that it's like obviously pretty stylish. It takes a lot of cues from Edgar Wright's work. There's a lot of like vivid use of editing and colors and musical choices that are fantastic, might I add. There's a great score to this picture by Quez, a musician I'm not too familiar with. It's very bouncy, like lo-fi sounding,
It
and it
goes with
definitely
the it
sets
goes with the
the
tone of the
tone.
film because a lot of these characters are in the art world. The movie actually opens up on an art gallery with a bunch of pictures of mouths, like the insides of people's mouths. And
Yeah,
it's really exaggerated, the pink colors, but
and then
it
later
gets
on,
you into
it's
the movie.
yeah, and then later on, getting even quirkier, the art pieces being shown are photographs of asses.
Yeah, and the main story, like, if we're gonna be honest with you, is not super complicated. The
Yeah,
conflicts in this story are super down to earth, but if somebody likes romance stories like the Before trilogies, even more recent
but like a
films
little
like
more comedic.
Shithouse, right? Shithouse by Cooper Raiff is a
Yeah,
very
but
down to
here,
earth, uh, you know,
yeah,
guy meets girl, and then they have a relationship during the course of the film.
but
So
one that like doesn't feel super cliched or super manipulative like a lot of romantic comedies have been. And this is, I'm gonna say straight up, as much as I do like a lot of films in the genre, like The Apartment, Annie Hall, When Harry Met Sally, uh, this is not a genre that I'm often the biggest fan of. Not because I don't like romance movies, but because it is just most of them are just kind of a compendium of cliches, and I get tired of that very quickly. And this having Rye Lane having subverted a lot of the tropes, although it does occasionally pay homage to them. I mean, hell, Colin Firth even has a cameo as a street vendor.
I know. How cool
Um,
is it that Colin Firth was down to show up probably a day on set and just film a
yeah,
one scene where his shirt literally says "Love Guac," which is a joke because he starred in Love Actually.
yeah,
How
yeah,
badass of him to do that after winning an Oscar for King's Speech. I
yeah.
commend him.
Although like the film did, I don't know if it is a smaller movie, but it had like a little bit of studio backing because it was a Fox Searchlight production. It was also getting funding from the BBC and the BFI, which, by the way, thank you for supporting this film. So they were able to like get like a character, an actor with some clout alongside a bunch of relative unknowns, which honestly it doesn't feel too terribly distracting. I even like didn't really notice the cameo at first.
I have to say too, these side characters and these supporting actors are fantastic in this film.
Yeah,
Very memorable. I actually thought the movie was a little slow in the beginning until it gets into a scene where he essentially goes on a third wheeling date with somebody that just broke up with him, and the new boyfriend for his ex-girlfriend
yeah,
is so funny, dude. Holy
yeah.
crap. He is not the smartest tool in the place where they keep tools, but my god, like Jesus,
He
dude,
ain't
he
the
was funny.
sharpest tool in the shed.
No, but like
That's
seriously,
going on
I really
TikTok.
liked too. Like they even met some other side characters that are in like different clubs, different art world, sex. Like I thought this was a fantastic picture.
It was. It's just like honestly, I I feel kind of bad that this movie is coming out just on Hulu and not on either a bigger streamer or better yet even in theaters, because I would have loved to
Dude,
see this in
hot
theaters
take. This
because
would have done okay in theaters in the
it
United States.
I maybe,
The
although
only
like
thing holding it back is like there are not many famous actors in it,
no.
but I think the quality is definitely good enough for theater release.
Yeah, and I just like feel like it was a missed opportunity for Searchlight under Disney to put it out on, to kind of dump it quietly onto Hulu instead of giving it a bigger release, maybe on a bigger streamer. even.
Because
And
this would have been a feast for the eyes in the big screen because that fisheye lens mixed
yeah,
with
and
the
because
saturated
of the
colors.
this, and plus it's really just like, if there's one film that we're going to discuss today that's kind of just an easy watch, an easy recommend, it would be Rye Lane, because it's first of all, it's only 82 minutes, so it's a short and fast paced
Guys, an
film.
hour and 20 of your time. That's a quick
and
breeze.
and the thing is, it's not too short. It at least earns its shorter runtime by like keeping everything going, and also having a fairly straightforward story, although like how it's about that becomes really what fascinates me
and
about this film and why it's so remarkable.
They feel real, and I have to say, if you have trouble hearing British accents, you might want the subtitles on, because in the beginning I had to really accustom my ears to it, because it was
There's
going.
A lot of
they speak really
everybody
fast.
Talks like this. Everybody talks like this too. They talk like they're on Love Island, UK. Oh, I got a text.
Yeah, so guys, definitely go watch it if you're into rom-coms. Let's pivot to our next non-spoiler review, and I just want to warn the audience, just so they know what's going on. This is going to be our non-spoiler review for Air, and then right after that, we're going Evil Dead deep dive, spoiler, non-spoiler, and then we're gonna rank the Evil Dead franchise at the end of the episode. So right now, though, is time to talk about Air, which is the new Ben Affleck directed picture. Leading man in this movie is Matt Damon, his buddy from Boston, as we say. Buddy from Boston. What do you think,
How do you
Connor?
like them apples?
How do you like them apples?
I thought it was quite good. I also got to see this. I got to see this on the big screen actually the same day as Mario, which made for an interesting double feature. I ended up liking this. I surprisingly ended up liking this just a little more than Mario, if I'm being honest. No disrespect to Jack Black.
It could be
no
that
disrespect
year of age.
Yeah, no disrespect to Jack Black and Peaches. Peaches.
But back to Air. Have you seen Ben Affleck's other films, Connor?
Yes, I've seen Argo, which won the Academy Award in 2012. I enjoyed that picture, but I didn't think it should have won, especially in a year that it was up against Django and Amour, especially. I know you've wanted me to watch this, but I need to see Gone Baby Gone, which I've heard is great.
Yeah, the reason I ask this is because I kind of want to go into Ben Affleck's career, because I think it culminates into the backstory of this movie. So Ben Affleck, as most people know, is a very prolific actor in the Hollywood industry that started in the early 90s. And he ended up winning an Oscar for Good Will Hunting, and then his career goes downhill, right? Tabloids to the wazoo. I don't even want to go into
Reindeer Games.
It. Yeah, and
he was the bomb in Phantoms.
Yeah, and Gigli didn't do too hot with the critics. I'm just gonna be honest. But
Turkey Time, gobble
after
gobble.
that, he directs a movie called Gone Baby Gone that takes place in Boston, and his brother Casey leads the film. And my God, he showed that he might even be stronger behind the camera than in front of it. Connor, I'm not gonna lie.
He's a solid director.
Gone. Then follows that up with
The Town,
a relatively by-the-numbers bank robbery movie with fantastic performances, and then his third movie, Argo, wins Best Picture.
The Oscar.
He goes from Gigli to winning Best Picture at the Oscars. That has to be commended, Connor. I have to say.
Applesauce, bitch.
So after that, he makes like a not so well-received movie called Live by Night, and then it kind of goes off the wayside, and then he follows that up after, might I add, marrying Jennifer Lopez after a 20-year split. He follows that up with Air, and Connor, I have to say, Ben Affleck is maturing as we can see in front of us. This is a really by the numbers and well-directed movie about the rise of the shoe company Nike, and the main rise being they're trying to sign a star athlete in college known as Michael Jordan, who everyone knows now is like a huge, he's arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest basketball player of all time.
The GOAT.
In this movie, Nike doesn't know that yet, but they have a feeling on their hands that if they sign this guy, they might go from the number 3 athletic company to the number 1 powerhouse that it is today.
Yeah, and it shows Phil Knight and the other Nike higher-ups, Phil Knight being played by Ben Affleck here with those amazing shades. Even he's a bit hesitant to sign Nike, not to sign Nike, but to sign onto the Air Jordans, and this is something that I find in common with a lot of films like this about entrepreneurship and sports, especially. It's basically about Hollywood filmmaking. Let's face it. These young
reflections
idealistic,
of it, for sure. It has to be noted, though, he went to Michael Jordan and literally said to him, "Do you want this movie getting made?" And then Michael gave his blessing and said, "The only stipulation I have if you make this is I want Viola Davis playing my mom because she's a fantastic actress."
And honestly, she's a standout in this film, alongside a pretty solid ensemble, including Matt Damon, Chris Tucker, even Chris Messina, who's very funny in the film. For me, and also Matthew Marr, a very good, very underrated character actor who has been in several films like Funny Pages and Lady Bird and Gone Baby Gone. And some
Mr. Maher was actually
he shows up in it.
Yeah, he was in Gone Baby Gone because I think he has some Boston connections that are similar with Ben
Affleck.
Yeah, and he's great, dude. He's fantastic.
Yeah, he's essentially the creator of the creator and designer of the actual shoe in the story. But for me, Viola Davis might be the standout. She was excellent as Jordan's mother.
I have to say, though, a lot of the sports speeches that you need in a sports movie, that's kind of the name of the game, guys. Some of these sports speeches work because Matt Damon's delivering these really cheesy lines, but I don't know, dude. It was somehow working for me. And I have to say, this movie, if you love the 80s like music and the vibe, it gets it down correctly.
Yeah.
One kind of stipend I have to say, though, is it did overuse it at times.
Yeah, I felt like it was starting... After a while, it did start to become one of those... Hey, look, it's the 80s, and we need to show that. Let's play Bunny for Nothing and show clips of Ronald Reagan, and show off the old like VHS technology, or else people won't know it's the 80s. And that like annoys me in a lot of modern pieces of media that take place in the time period. I don't think they need to use that many already famous 80s songs to... It felt distracting after a while, really.
I wouldn't disagree with you, but I have to say some of the needle drops in this film work for me.
Some are all right.
Yeah. I also want to mention that Robert Richardson as the cinematographer, who's a common collaborator with Tarantino, for those that know. I actually did like his... I liked this kind of All the President's Men kind of aesthetic, office aesthetic it was going for.
Yeah,
what did you
kind
think,
of
Connor?
minimalistic.
What do you think?
I think it worked for the subject matter because it's obviously largely set. It's not really like a full-on chamber piece, but it's set mostly indoors during business meetings, and they managed to pull it off and make it not boring, just like All the President's Men. But one thing that did bother me was that, considering again, like Academy Award winning and nominated cinematographers and editors were behind this, some of the cinematography and editing was surprisingly messy in this film. I can't really pinpoint exactly why, but it almost felt like there wasn't good enough coverage of each scene, because there's one moment where Matt Damon is in a bar, I think talking with Jason Bateman, and it goes from, it's pretty much, most of it is like a static, like shot reverse shot scene with basic coverage, and then it cuts to a random handheld shot that goes into a crash zoom on one of their faces, and I was like, wait, what happened here?
Yeah, I didn't notice. I didn't notice those little editing choices that
I don't know. It felt, I don't know. It sometimes felt like a little jarring in a way that I don't think was intentional. Like almost as if they didn't have a really good take for that scene.
Could be.
Then again, I think one thing that I actually did see in behind the scenes was that they used a special camera for some scenes in this film where someone would operate the camera and like move it around, but then Rob Richardson would have this like this wireless stand and then turn the camera around. So it looked kind of interesting, but I feel like judging by like some of the choices that we mentioned, I don't know if that quite paid off.
Yeah, I have to say though,
Technical
for the
nitpicks.
most part, for me, my big standout was an excellent directing job from Affleck's part.
Yeah.
I didn't notice those small little tweaks that you had, but I did notice this. This movie does not have a ton of action in it, and is still making people talking in a room entertaining. So,
exciting, yeah.
And it's about making a shoe, dude. It's tough to pull off.
Yeah, how can you like make this movie that's literally about a shoe company and a little pro Nike to a fault, arguably, but it manages to make, again, like the creation of the shoe surprisingly kind of riveting, but not in a way that feels obnoxious, like an Adam McKay movie, where it just like suddenly has sudden fourth wall breaks and editing and freeze frames and text on screen. It doesn't like go too far to try to too hard to make this entertaining.
Yeah, if you're into sports history, just go to this movie because it was made for $90 million and it got a theater release. So I don't know if that's gonna make money back, but if you like these movies, definitely go check it out.
Yeah, I hate to say I don't think so, because if I recall correctly, part of the reason it was so expensive because Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Viola Davis, this stacked cast, and also, if I recall correctly, this film was supposed to be a straight-to-streaming movie, but it tested well enough for Amazon, typically a streamer, to give the film a theatrical release. But the problem is it cost $90 million, and it came out the same weekend as Mario. So it's not getting a bad turnout in terms of ticket sales. It's trying its best
with some really tough competition, considering Mario is about to surpass $1 billion worldwide.
This film, might I add, is... And because of the $90 million budget, I think the film has only made $70 million to date. This film is not actually doing too great at the box office, surprisingly. Yeah, I don't know if it will. I think $90 million.
Guys. You can still go see it. That's the key. So if you want to go see that movie, definitely go check out Air. Shall we go? Do you want to do any more about Air, Connor?
A little bit, a little like conclusion to my like sort of rant about the $90 million budget, because I think it was partly, I don't know if it was that, I don't know if marketing was added on to the 90 million, or if 90 million also includes the marketing. So that makes me a little worried for Air's performance, because it is a solid enough movie that I think should honestly be doing okay. But I digress. Go see it. Go support it. It's quite a good film.
All right, guys. Our next part of this podcast episode, we will be going into the Evil Dead Rise movie that just came out. And then, as I said before, right after, we're ranking every single of one of these Evil Dead movies that came out, right?
Groovy,
dude. All right, Connor. Do you want to give the audience a little backstory into what the Evil Dead franchise is, how it relates to the horror genre in general, and then this new Evil Dead Rise movie that just came out?
So Evil Dead was originally made as a low-budget kind of homemade, like low-budget horror film by someone you may know named Sam Raimi. Guess what he went on to do? Spider-Man.
Guys. Yeah. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Mans.
Do you know how much he has sacrificed? But anyway, he and Robert Tapert and Bruce Campbell basically got together over like a few weekends in this cabin to shoot this movie. They had already done a few short films. They were, as a matter of fact, they weren't actually too into horror, but they made little horror films because they were so cheap to make and so creative potentially. They were, it seems like they were more into slapstick comedy than anything else. They were fans of the Three Stooges. At the end of all of Sam Raimi's films, you see extras and stunt doubles credited as fake Shemps as a tribute. And Evil Dead, again, this low budget, like very homemade horror, like cheap horror film, was surprisingly a really fun and just creative and just crazy movie.
With
And
some
you could really,
innovative, low budget filmmaking techniques, including dragging a camera on the ground by putting it like on a piece of cardboard and just
yeah,
going really quick with it.
that is, and when you see it in the films, that's just classic Raimi of
When
the
the spirit
camera
is chasing people, he does it really well with the low budget, guys. So what ends up
it's
happening,
impressive.
it goes bonkers at the box office, right?
Well, the film itself, I think it premiered in 81, and then it actually wound up getting accepted out of competition at the 1982 Cannes Film Festival, and that led to Stephen King heavily championing the first Evil Dead and calling it one of the best horror films in years. And then it gets a theatrical release.
If I ever made a horror movie and Stephen King said it was the best horror movie of the year, I'd literally pat myself so hard on the back it would give me a 5-star, guys.
Yeah, it's a high endorsement, and even though like that film, it still wound up, even though it like got some notice from critics at Siskel and Ebert, who usually hated horror films, actually enjoyed the film. The film did have a few hurdles, being a smaller movie, and the fact that it was such a gory film that the MPAA gave it an X rating, which prevented it from getting shown in many theaters, so it had to forego a rating, but it still got Raimi enough notice in the scene to get him a next feature.
Probably one of the most gory horror movies to have come out, like, because it's even gorier than Carrie, I would say, the first Evil Dead.
It's wild. It's a lot. There's splatter. It is just wonderful.
But that's kind of the point, right? Like, and even Tarantino has said, like, one of the Evil Dead 1 and 2, like, if you're going into it trying to psychoanalyze if this is realistic blood gore,
no,
but
don't do it. Don't read too much into it.
Execution of, dead spirits, like, going
and just
hard.
Geysers of fake blood everywhere. It's
great. It's great.
These are just some of the best horror pictures, like of the late 20th century. And right after the first Evil Dead, he gets Crimewave from a studio, this quirky like black comedy that has a troubled production, and it bombs horrifically at the box office. It only gets like showings in like 5 theaters. But with that ends up coming Sam Raimi actually getting a somewhat bigger budget for Evil Dead 2, which turns out to be just, it's a loose remake of the first, but this time it's a slapstick comedy, and it is fantastic. One of the better horror sequels.
We're going to mention that on our rankings. And then what happens after that, Connor? He works again with Bruce Campbell, as people know.
Yeah,
and then he goes to Army of Darkness, right?
He between that, before Spider-Man, he did one superhero film, Darkman, with Liam Neeson as a scarred pulp comic superhero, very much post Batman with an Art Deco kind of feel to it. That's a success. And then he gets Army of Darkness, which was originally meant to be, well, it still is referred to as an Evil Dead 3, but it got released more or less as a standalone movie.
Talk about a
with
change
a different
of
ending
pace for the franchise. Like, we're just going into medieval times in that one instead of modern day.
And it's not a very gory film. They were aiming for a PG-13, but the MPAA had personal issues with Raimi, so
I can see why that movie's not PG-13 as well, in their defense.
Yeah, and Army of Darkness is like easily the most comedic, probably the least scary in the series, and it's still such a fun movie to just quote along, and
Definitely.
It's just one of the great like cult movies of all time. And then he gets a few more films. He actually gets he actually kind of changes pace a little at that time. Raimi does a western, The Quick and the Dead, with Leo DiCaprio and Sharon
Russell
Stone.
Crowe, Leo
Yeah,
DiCaprio, Western that I have to say doesn't have the best screenwriting I've ever seen, but
I don't think
it's
it. Yeah,
stacked, and Gene Hackman, and I don't know, I had a good time with it, I have to admit.
yeah, yeah. And then after that, he even makes a baseball movie, For the Love of the Game, which is a kind of an anomaly in his career. And then he makes The Gift, and then he makes a supposedly very good drama thriller called A Simple Plan. And
Guys, you have to watch that if you want to know how to screenwrite. I'm not gonna lie, I've had multiple professors literally recommend to me reading A Simple Plan, and I can see why, because that movie is so efficient with just about three characters trying to get money from a plane that goes down, and they steal money. So it really goes into that human kind of greed when it comes to money in a very small secluded area in the middle of buttfuck, Nebraska, I'm pretty sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
homespun story.
With a
And
crazy Billy Bob Thornton performance.
yeah,
Connor,
he got
have
an
you seen
Academy
it?
Award now.
Have you seen it,
Not
Connor?
not yet. I want to though.
You definitely have to go watch it.
The screenplay I know got the screenplay and Billy Bob Thornton's character, his performance. They both got Academy Award nomination. So this was probably the most acclaim Raimi has received critically.
I think that's the time I was most impressed with him as a director. I have to admit.
Yeah, because he could do something dramatic like that and be beyond like fantasy and superhero and horror films. And although he does right after that, he actually came back because he got his biggest budget yet for, as we all know, the Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, there's not much needed
My
to be said
back!
about that. Those
My
movies still
back!
hold up to this day, even though I have to admit the third one doesn't, but
Yeah, and that's not necessarily Raimi's fault either. It was he had troubles with the studio because Sony, oh boy, Sony, they basically forced him to put Venom in the movie when he really wanted to focus
yeah,
on
but
Sandman.
like kind of
and
focusing
it
back on Evil
doesn't
Dead,
really work.
Connor, just because like that's what the episode's about. He ends up going with Army of Darkness, like we said, and not returning to the franchise until which year, Connor?
2013 when he helped produce after making a pretty good horror film that was almost an Evil Dead 4 in its own way called Drag Me to Hell. Right after a few years after that, he and Bruce Campbell produce but do not direct a reboot of the Evil Dead franchise, which surprisingly isn't that bad. It's a miracle that it wasn't awful, but that Raimi and Campbell were both pretty wise to give that the better version of a potential reboot a chance.
Yeah, and so they do that, and then a movie comes out in 2013, guys, that is not directed by Sam Raimi. He is just backing
Payday
it as a
Alvarez.
producer, and we're gonna explain it later in our rankings. It is not bad. It is very low budget,
Yeah, surprisingly.
right? But with
yeah.
actors you wouldn't really know. There is an actor that was in the movie Pearl. I don't know if you've seen Connor. Have you seen Pearl?
Yes,
The
it's
guy
a
with
great
glasses
film.
is in it. So if people like recognize that, but it's pretty solid, right?
Yeah, it's pretty groovy. And after a few years after that, I know Raimi actually did another kind of anomaly in his career, Oz the Great and the Powerful, the same year that
We don't talk about that one, guys.
Yeah,
Also,
it's
yeah, yeah.
not the best.
Let's move on because he ends up, doing even Multiverse of Madness too later down, which we're also not going to talk about either.
I thought it wasn't bad. I would see
I
it.
had issues with it.
It definitely it feels like a Raimi movie though. Like if you want to go to it as a fan of Raimi, like it honestly does kind of feel like that was one of the Marvel movies where they did, I think, give the director a lot of
it has his
more creative
fingerprint
freedom
on
than
it for
usual.
sure. It does have his fingerprint.
Yeah,
But then what ends up happening
because it's one of the darker Marvel movies.
Yeah, what ends up happening is a giant pandemic, as we all know, and then he starts getting ideas of how can we make another Evil Dead movie, and he trusts another pretty
Lee
unknown
Cronin,
filmmaker
who had done one horror film before that, called I think it's The Hole in the Ground, and Raimi decided to actually hand pick the director for the next Evil Dead film, who turned out to be Lee Cronin, for Evil Dead Rise. And this was, believe it or not, this was originally scheduled to be a straight to HBO Max movie, because New Line and Warner's basically bought back the rights to the franchise and kind of did this film. But again, kind of like Air, this film tested very well with audiences, and that resulted in it getting a theatrical release, which I'd say it deserved. This was a really, really good spooky time.
Do you want to give the audience a little backstory to what Evil Dead Rise is about, Connor?
Yes, Evil Dead Rise doesn't actually share too much in common with the original trilogy. It starts off initially with a cabin in the woods story, which is like what you would kind of expect from especially the first Evil Dead, which this film certainly harkens back to the darker tone of, and it doesn't have quite as much comedy as the sequels.
Not at all.
But it first of all, it has a pretty effective opener with a pretty like nasty, not a kill, but a pretty nasty image, and a really, really cool title reveal for the opening credits.
Let's do non-spoilers as best as we can, because guys, we're gonna do non-spoilers for those that haven't seen it, but those that have, we're gonna dive deep in the spoiler section.
Yeah, so after this pretty solid pre-title sequence, we end up, instead of another group of hapless teens going to a cabin in the woods like we saw in the first film and like we saw in the pre-title sequence, we actually flash back to this family in a high-rise apartment, the mother of which and her sister both actually being goth rockers. Nice like twist on the series. Their kids end up finding the Book of the Dead in the complex, and then they inadvertently summon the demons. They summon the Deadites, and
which I have to say, like
their family becomes
a new way that the Book of the Dead gets summoned in this movie that I actually really liked, because once you do so many of these movies, like you get kind of bored with the recipe, I must say. But I enjoyed how the kids, were kind of involved in how this book gets discovered. And I think something to note too is we're taking place in California for this time around.
Yeah, we're no longer in a like rural Wisconsin anymore.
Switching it up,
in an isolated cabin. We're here in a city, and it still like feels claustrophobic as hell.
Because it centers mostly in an apartment complex, right? So like you can only use so much like imagery with a shady, pretty rundown, normal looking apartment in LA.
Yeah, and once the Deadites show up, and the mother, who we see a lot in the trailers, becomes one of them. Mommy's with the Margaret now. It gets gory and nasty and just glorious.
So gory, guys. I have to
this
say,
might be.
I was impressed
this may be the blood,
with how much they were able to do without an NC-17.
Yeah, this may be. I think this and the remake might be the bloodiest in the series, if you could even believe that. It's a lot. It's gnarly, and it's just, there's a body count to this one. And mostly practical effects, just like the remake, which I respect.
Yeah, I have to go out and say that I had my issues with this particular iteration because I didn't really care as much about the characters as I wanted to, but I'm going to go with the good parts first, because this podcast is more about reviewing movies but not totally shitting on them, right? Like,
yeah, we're not trashing filmmakers.
So like
here.
If we end up not liking a movie, we're just not going to review it probably, and that'll be a sign.
Unless it's like one that like kind of needs to be talked about, like a Quantumania, that's like kind of almost like a fairly big failure.
Yeah,
especially from a disappointment.
But back to this, I thought that the blood and the guts it was well done in this movie, to the point
Yeah.
it was hard to look at sometimes. Like, I'm not one to wince at stuff because I can handle
Yeah.
violence, but it's a
There
lot.
there was a particularly disturbing moment involving an eye injection that if you are sensitive to that stuff, don't watch it.
Yeah, but if you like horror movies that are very gory and just blood to the crank
Just
it up past 10, guys. This is it.
This is
This
a
is it.
splatter movie in every sense of the term. It just, again, geysers of blood just go everywhere, all over this poor family. One of their kids even becomes a deadite. It dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Yeah, and talk about too, like, you can't predict some parts of this movie because no one's safe. No one is safe, dude. I
Yeah,
love that about Evil
it's
Dead franchise, I have to say, because
yeah.
I
This
was
is
just like, nobody's safe from the Deadites and
with
stuff.
yeah, and with the level of claustrophobia here and the, again, relative lack of comedy, even though like some of these moments are just so over the top, like I was like chuckling at some moments because it just gets so insane, and that's a lot of this homage to Raimi style. It in all those ways, it's very much more more akin to the first film than the sequels. It's kind of almost they even have a callback to the infamous tree scene in the first Evil Dead, which is kind of I'll admit a kind of the one unnecessarily graphic scene in the first film. That's kind of paid homage to, because before the before the mother becomes a deadite, she ends up in the elevator and all the wires in the shaft come and like tie her up and torture her.
Guys,
Oh,
the movie gets really insane at points because
yeah.
these Evil Dead spirits, as people know if you watch the franchise, they do not give a crap who you are, dude.
Yeah,
They
even
will hunt you down, take over you, and make you do stuff to your family that you did not want to
even
do.
yeah, even if you're a mother with kids, you'll end up possessed by a deadite and being like, and then when your kids are all concerned about you, you're like, nothing that a good old kiss and hug from mom won't fix.
Yeah, so speaking of the mother, what did you think of the lead actress of this film, Connor?
I thought she was very, very surprisingly good in this film.
Yeah,
And she
she
could,
had a
and
pretty, like, she's the
Alyssa
main, like,
Sutherland.
kind of problem obstacle, I would kind of, besides obviously the Evil Dead spirits taking out, she's the main, like, bad. Oh crap, like, do not mess with
Yeah,
her.
because the Deadites really get her
Yeah,
good.
and I have to say too, one thing, like, and I know, like I said earlier, like, I don't like to crap on movies too hard. I wasn't messing with the child actors too hard in this
I thought they
iteration.
were all right in it.
Really, I preferred other actors in the previous ones, I have to say. So if you're into movies though, where, like, you can kind of escape into the just complete and utter
Chaos.
glorification of these Evil Dead spirits destroying this family apart. This is the movie for
Oh,
you.
yeah, on the spectrum, it is very much on chaotic evil.
Yeah, Connor, for Letterbox, just to give context for our ratings, where would you have put this out of 5?
A four,
4 out
because
of 5.
I was just, first of all, I was at an opening night screening, AMC Georgetown, packed house. This film actually, I think, opened at number 2 or 3. It's not it. I mean, it's a lower budget horror picture, so it's going to be an easier moneymaker. But still, this is a impressive performance for a worthy movie, and what from honestly what was let's Evil Dead, full disclosure, is my favorite horror franchise of all time. I don't Not a single bad movie.
Yeah, I think I have to say too that it has some iconic shots in this movie. Like, you will remember. I don't want to spoil it, but the lead actress, her name is Lily Sullivan. Creepy mofo in this movie at times,
Yeah.
which is means she did her job correctly. And yeah, if you like to get scared, it might do the job. Connor, do you
Yeah,
want
it's
to
this
do
is
you
a
want to go
very
into You want to go into our spoiler section for this
Yeah.
review?
So go first of all, go watch this scary, gory, but very fun and entertaining horror picture as usual from the Evil Dead franchise, a franchise that has never disappointed. Go watch this film if you want to watch it, because gonna we are gonna go spoilers.
Spoiler heavy section starting now for Evil Dead Rise. Connor, I'm going to ask you this first. I usually start with asking you about the ending, but this time I'm going to switch it up and ask you, did you think that this movie's plot made complete and utter sense to you? Because I have to say at times, for me, I was a little checked out.
I don't know if you go to an Evil Dead movie as much for the plot as you go as much just for a pure roller coaster, like adrenaline rush, really.
Yeah, I agree with you too. And
I feel like the movie did like take a little while to get going before they find the book. I wasn't like too crazy about like the initial family dynamic.
I mean, I'm going to just be honest, the scalping scene in the beginning caught me in a good way. It was a great opening to the movie.
It was
has a great opening shot with the title of the movie and the girl, floating in the air.
And in the very beginning, there's a nice little homage to the opening scene in the first film, where you see like it looks like a drone shot going through the forest. Very, like, I thought half the time, like I was like, Raimi could have directed this.
Yeah, definitely. I think also $15 million for this movie, they spent freaking well, because this movie looks great.
I think this may be definitely one of the bigger budget entries in the series. A series that's like known for like essentially being like kind of cheap horror pictures, but great ones.
Yeah. I do have to say, because we're in the spoiler section, some character decisions on these kids' part are like, please don't do that, and they just do it anyway. And I get it, they're kids, but yeah, I have to say, some of it was pissing me off during the movie. What did you think, I guess,
kids be like that,
of him summoning the Book of the Dead by playing a record? I thought that was kind of cool, dude. I'm gonna be
that was a really like nice and like creepy moment when he starts speeding up the record with his finger, and in order to hear the sermon that eventually turns into a from the Deadites.
Yo, yeah, it gets creepy because the sound design's excellent.
Yeah.
What's another standout scene that I'm thinking of? Off the top of my head, the neighbors getting just completely and utterly
annihilated
right
by the mother Deadite, who then has the scene you've all seen in the trailers, where she looks at her kid through the peephole, which is just a wonderfully macabre moment.
Dude, when she's like cooking in the kitchen, and the kids are on the left side of the frame, and her face all messed up and creepy is on the right. Yeah. No, honestly, that was not that bad, Connor. That's the stuff.
That's the stuff of nightmares, really.
Yeah, that creeped me out. But yeah, I have to say, like, comparatively to the other ones, I'm gonna go into it in the rankings. It wasn't my cup of tea compared to the other ones.
Yeah, I guess I do like this film, but I'm not gonna say it's the best in the series. You'll see what that is later. Do you want to pivot to the ending?
Yeah, let's pivot to the ending, Connor.
This was one hell of an ending.
Yeah, do you want to just like give a little context to? I know people know it, but like just so they can know what we're talking about, I guess.
Yeah, the kids try to escape from the Deadites. And although when this first happened, I was apprehensive about it, because it's kind of a plot convenience. After the Deadites try to shove the kids into this wood chipper in a pretty horrific moment, the chainsaw, the aunt just like finds the chainsaw right there. which I guess like you could call it a bit convenient, but come on, when she starts sawing up the Deadites, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
It is. It
it
is.
goes crazy, guys. And I have to mention this too. I kind of liked how nobody was safe, and we only by the end of it had the daughter, the little girl, the blonde,
Yeah.
and the sister of the main character. Right? She's the last two.
Yeah. Lily Sullivan with the chainsaw, just fucking massacring those Deadites and just grinding them up.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
really well done. The gore.
That
I can't say it enough.
Yeah. That being said, like one disappointment of me that I guess it's from me personally because did I I kind of wanted this to happen, and unfortunately, it didn't. On one hand, like he does show up in the movie, but as like just a brief bit of voiceover. Other than that, no Bruce Campbell. I'm so sorry to
Sadness, guys.
say.
Yeah, that I wasn't a fan of
Yeah,
that either. I'm a
not
sucker for
not.
him in the original,
Yeah,
so
it's too bad because he did executive produce the film along with Raimi and Tappert. So I guess he might as well have made a cameo, made like an like a an in person cameo in the film, but that was not groovy.
that was not groovy. Well, that about concludes it for our spoiler section for Evil Dead Rise. We will now be ranking every single Evil Dead movie that has been released up to now 2023, which is about 5 movies, right, Connor?
Yes,
Exactly 5 movies.
Five films that I enjoy. I wouldn't say that there's like one to really skip out on like most horror series. I'd say like all these like give them their time. These are if you want like a great like entertaining gory horror film, just like go watch all these Evil Dead movies. They're great.
Yeah, and for those that are new, how we do this section is we rank them and we go backwards. So we're going to start with number 5.
Worst to
So
best.
let's just do it, Connor. Number 5 for your personal pick. Which one do you have for Evil Dead?
The 2013 version.
2013 Evil Dead. My number 5, and this might be a hot take, I did not like Army of Darkness as much as most
What?
people. Yeah.
Get out.
Number 5 is Army of
Shop
Darkness
smart.
for me.
Shop smart. Shop S smart.
I'm gonna defend it
Give me
now
some
because I
sugar,
think this is
baby.
probably gonna be one of the hottest takes on this episode. Army of Darkness takes such a subversion to the franchise that I did not want it to go. I liked it when it stayed in the freaking creeks in the woods, and all of a sudden now we're doing slapstick comedy, Monty Python, and mixed with some skeletons. Now I just did not mess
I
with
think
this movie.
I think if you look at it not as an Evil Dead movie, I feel like it plays better that way because that from what I understand, like that's how the studio kind of wanted it to be and kind of like formed it to be. So I think if I recall correctly, the director's cut, if you want to actually see it more as an Evil Dead movie, that is like more so the way to go because like in that one, spoiler alert, Ash gets screwed and ends up oversleeping after taking the potion, whereas in the theatrical cut you get like the Hollywood ending of him just shooting deadites in the supermarket and then being like, hail to the king, baby.
Yeah, and also just that whole storyline too with the main female that he has
MF
a love.
Davids.
Yeah, he has a love interest with. It didn't work for me, that part, I have to say.
Yeah,
But I will say this:
valid.
Bruce Campbell still killed it in in
Yeah,
Army of Darkness.
this is probably the funniest film in the series, hands down. It's this movie.
I think it's
This
a
is a
comedy.
comedy.
Dude. It's a comedy.
Yeah, so many one-liners, so quotable. Just I reference it a lot, and it's a really just entertaining film, whether or not you look at it as an Evil Dead movie.
Right. Number 4, Connor. What do you have?
My number, we forgot to mention my number 5, which was
Oh.
Evil Dead 2013.
No. Oh yeah.
Um,
So like, what do you want to kind of give as reasoning? Why is that your number 5, dude?
Not it's not my number five because I dislike the film necessarily. I think this is an enjoyable movie. It's really gory. It's very it's just when it gets going, it gets going. And it first of all, it's just kind of it's a remarkable that this wasn't terrible. I'm honestly thankful that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be because like when I first heard about an Evil Dead remake coming out, I was like, "My God, humanity is doomed." And then when I see the film and see that incredible finale, it gets really good. But the first 20 minutes, I got very skeptical about because I was like, I'm not really liking this new group of teens. I not really liking this overt build up considering that the first two films I kind of got to it and it's just at first like it started off like kind of a teen drama that I didn't love and the I started adjusting to this as the film went on, but I don't love how it did the whole desaturated gritty reboot colors because when I watch this film like I'm like okay this is a studio movie and what was so like fun about the first two films was that they were pretty like grimy and unpolished compared to this but still it's an entertaining horror picture and it's just like campy creepy gory just it's still not a bad movie.
Yeah, I have to say it's the most low budget in terms of the aesthetic alone out of the whole franchise. Even to the point where I think Evil Dead 1 had a lower budget. It looks a little bit
Yeah, it's cheap.
higher budget than the 2013 release. I have to say I did enjoy this one quite a bit.
Yeah.
And you'll see it later in my rankings, but shall we go on to number 4, Connor?
Yeah, my number four is actually Rise, which we just discussed. It's mostly down here because I still like have such an attachment to those original three films, and those for me are like even with more and more entries in the series, like those are the ones that it can't that any new movie like will have at least a little trouble touching.
Yeah, my number 4 too is also Evil Dead Rise because
Agreement.
the originals I'm a fan of, like you are also, but I have to say this, the overall tone of this movie at times wasn't as cohesive as the other ones, weirdly, in terms of I don't know if like it was just trying to be gratuitous to the nth degree, because I think this is the goriest of them all. I don't know if you agree, Connor, with this.
In all honesty, probably that and the remake certainly.
Yeah, and I don't know if like the caring of the characters was as strong for me on this go around.
Especially compared to Army of Darkness and Evil Dead 2 where like Ash is the main guy. Like he's honestly like he's more of like a final he's not like the male final girl in the first picture. Number 3?
My number 3. Do you want me to go or do you want to go?
I'll go. It's Army of Darkness.
Army of Darkness at number 3. So mine is a little different since I had Army of Darkness at number 5. My number 3 actually is the 2013 Evil Dead movie.
Hot take.
Yeah, because honestly, I had very low expectations because I saw this after Rise just to be able to complete this episode and the rankings. And I was impressed with how scared I was with how little of a fucking budget this movie had. The scares work because the blood goes, like we said, to the 10th degree. But I have to say, it scared me, and that's what a horror movie is supposed to do. And it did it more than the new film did. So that's why I put it there.
Yeah. My number 3 is Army of Darkness, mostly because like I think that's a film I'd certainly watch a lot more often than the remake, and I guess it's like a more fun film that I like get to like kind of can watch over and over like the first two.
I think out of all of them, that one has gotten the most like cult status out of all the Evil Deads. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure.
yeah, probably because of a lot of that is on Bruce Campbell as well,
Number
and being
two,
like, yeah, no, my number two is the first, The Evil Dead.
my number two is also the first, guys, which means we both have the same
We're in
number one,
agreement
Connor.
again.
Let's go. We have similar
Yes,
taste.
we have Evil Dead 2 at number one.
Yeah. So, but talking about Evil Dead 1 as our number two personal pick, I will say this: Evil Dead 1, with how little resources Raimi had, and I know I say this a lot, I was impressed considering it's the 80s too, early
In the
80s.
early 80s, and I think that they had like only how much this film cost, because it was extremely, like, even compared to like low budget horror pictures, it was a
It was
shoestring
scrapping, guys, and
budget.
guess
It
what?
was
I think
seven,
Raimi knew that my actors are maybe not going to win Oscars here, and that doesn't matter with this horror movie.
yeah, because
They
this is
worked. I
just
cared about
I
these college students in this random ass cabin. I don't know why. I think I could kind of relate because I was around college at that time. I was genuinely in for the ride with Evil Dead 1.
yeah, and plus it cost only 375 grand, and what they just really want to do is just be like as creative as possible with this genre as they could on with such little resources, and it paid off. And by the way, um a fairly little known filmmaker was assisting editing with Sam Raimi on the first Evil Dead, and this is part of what got him his break. And that filmmaker's name, I shit you not, Joel Cohen.
Whoa, guys!
Yes,
I did
that
not know
Joel
that.
Cohen
Joel
of the
Cohen.
Coen brothers.
Wow. And he, if I'm not mistaken, released Blood Simple not long after.
Yeah, and originally, fun fact, Bruce Campbell actually starred in the I think the like little short film that the Coens made to show the film to potential backers, because that was another like very cheap independent film
Yeah.
that
So
also was so wildly creative with how it approached its genre,
so
and
essentially
also became a
one of
surprise
the
hit.
greatest American filmmakers to come out in the last quarter century took tutelage from Sam Raimi on the Evil Dead
Yeah,
filming.
and in that respect, like, him and Raimi kind of had that parallel success story.
Definitely. Well, this is time to talk about our number one pick, which is Evil Dead 2.
One of the horror and comedy, they're both such subjective genres. Both of them often tend to fail, but when they're both done together and done so well, like Raimi does here, and so perfectly balanced, like, this is just one of the most fun movie going experiences you'll ever have.
I think what I liked most
Just
about this compared to all the other Evil Dead movies is it it was so interesting. Some of the gags they do, like with a literal laughing deer mannequin on
yeah.
the wall. And Bruce Campbell having to, obviously use a weapon that you would not normally see in movies, right? I don't think did that happen in the first one? Did he have an axe as an arm, dude?
He had a chainsaw as an arm in this one,
Oh
actually.
yeah, a chainsaw. My
Remember?
bad. I mixed them up.
Groovy.
Yeah, his the interesting places it goes in this one, I messed with more than going into the Crusades because it still kept to the core of what Evil Dead 1 was about.
Yeah, and in all honesty, it is admittedly kind of a low-key retread of the first, but that's kind of part of the fun of it, because it basically essentially begins with the ending of the first film where the Deadite is chasing after him and implied to have killed him, but instead he basically gets taken back to the cabin to have to relive this again, and another example of Ash just getting completely screwed.
No,
And it's like we hate to have to laugh so much at at Ash's pure misery every minute he's on screen, but it's just golden, like slapstick horror.
And on the topic of Ash too, Bruce Campbell is excellent in all of these movies. For me, I like him most in Evil Dead 2. I don't know what it is. I think it was the perfect balance of he got accustomed to Sam Raimi as a director and like as a friend, and the character is just going through a journey in number 2.
Like
guys.
you've also got you've not you don't just have him. You have the redneck and his idiot girlfriend, and you've got
The supporting cast is a little
Henrietta.
bit better. The supporting cast for this go around was a little bit better than Evil Dead 1. I have to say.
Certainly, because it like plays into like these characters like being such, including Ash, like being such caricatures, and it kind of adding to the comedy of it.
Yeah, I could see somebody though, if they didn't like the first one, the second one's not going to be your cup of tea, because like you were
No,
saying,
it's because it's
very
even
similar.
more. It's even, but the thing is, like, it's even more wild. This is also like arguably a comedy. It's
Yeah.
it's funny as hell and it's scary as hell at the same time, and you honestly are just like laughing as much as you are squirming at it. It's one of the, it really is like kind of the example of how to do like a horror comedy.
Yeah, Sam Raimi, one of the best horror film directors that, like, when his career is done, I think we'll look back and be like, he was a top dog in that genre, for
Yeah,
sure.
and the thing is, I think a lot of what I really respect about Raimi is that he was able to branch out of that as well, and even like use some elements of those horror pictures, of those Evil Dead pictures in his later work as kind of a blueprint. And this speaks to a lot of like big directors who have gotten their start in horror, like James Cameron, of course, Sam
James
Raimi,
Cameron,
to a degree,
Avatar, guys.
to even Spielberg to a degree, with like, I think you could argue like Jaws and maybe Duel are kind of like unconventional horror films. And even to a degree, Joel Cohen, because first of all, he got started editing Evil Dead, and Blood is Simple itself definitely like takes its cue from the slashers in its visual style, because it's like a
Absolutely.
neo noir with like very like horror movie like suspense sequences. And it's another, just like Evil Dead, one of the better, more confident debuts to really come out in the late century.
Yeah, well, that about wraps it up for our Evil Dead deep dive and our Evil Dead ranking session. Connor, do you want to tell the audience a little bit about what you saw recently in theaters? Because I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, recently, because I'm on Tuesday, I'm actually going to be going back home to New Jersey, and unfortunately, there are not as many cool screenings in Jersey as there are in DC. So it's hard to be a cinephile out there, but I was able to catch a few nice early, some early, like some special, but not all for recent, mostly for recent releases in DC before, and basically the last week and this over the weekend I had basically did a bunch of catch up
Yeah, because
on
people would be
some recent
surprised, but
films.
a lot of areas that are not either a downtown or a major city, they won't show movies like Showing Up with Kelly Reichardt. They won't do that. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, they, because I feel like the smaller studios might not. I'm guessing there's probably more of a market in the cities for smaller films, for independent films, because a lot of that audience came for independent films from the megaplexes, the bigger
Which is part of
theaters.
the reason, Connor, why I'm trying to go to New York and
Yeah,
try to do the independent scene there, because
yeah.
I know it's gonna up my chances, just location wise.
Yeah, definitely, because it's there are gonna be more outlets to support independent and art house film there. So, but back on what I saw recently, I recently got, actually, thank you Letterbox and Focus Features for this. At AMC Tyson's Corner 16, I got an early free screening of Polite Society.
Wow.
which is the new martial arts action comedy from it's a debut feature from director Nita Manzoor, and it takes all of its cues from Edgar Wright, a bit of everything everywhere all at once, and it was a fun experience to see. Then after that, I got an early screening at the Alamo Drafthouse in DC of a very perverse Norwegian film called Sick of Myself, which is a rather pitch black comedy about a woman who essentially, after witnessing a horrific accident, becomes a pill junkie, desperate for followers, and she exploits the fact that after having this crazy Russian drug, her face gets so terribly scarred, and she basically exploits her like complete
Yeah,
the
you
complete like
told me about
destruction of
this
her
one,
face.
Connor, and I have to say, out of all the ones you've seen, this is the one I'm gonna check out first because I'm
Yeah,
a sucker for flawed female characters or male characters, might I
same.
add. And if it's done well, like you're saying, I gotta go check out the
Yeah, and
performance.
I feel like this film did it well because it's a satire and it is not, again, asking for absolutely no sympathy for this leading character and basically diving deep into very much like why she's so self-destructive, and deep down it's really that she's an attention whore essentially,
Wow.
and very much a prescient theme in this day and age, in the age of social media. um if you thought that Julie from Worst Person in the World thinks she's the worst person in the world, Signa, the main character in Sick of Myself, is the worst person in the world. Um, and after that, I saw Sisu, the new action film from Finland. It's a World War II action film heavily influenced by Sergio Leone's spaghetti western mixed with the extreme violence of Tarantino, and it's a really bloody film, and it's about this Finnish soldier who becomes who's basically the ultimate like one man death squad. He is like Rambo for Nazis. He just
When I
fucking
saw the trailer
annihilates
to that
them.
one, Connor, it kind of gave me John Wick in World War II with an old man. Is that what it
Pretty
is?
much.
Okay.
Pretty
Okay.
much. And he talks even less than John Wick. He's a man of few words and a total badass.
Oh, cool.
Then after that, I this film is in wide release, but I thought I'd mention it because I saw this film that I would out of these, this would probably be an easy one to recommend for people. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret,
That
which is
is
based
the
off the
new,
G. Bloom book
Yeah, Judy Bloom, the same director as The
of
Edge of
Edge of
17.
17. Yes, and this was a very I wasn't too familiar with the source material before that, even though the author is from my hometown. It's a really like it was one of the better like studio made like non indie coming of age films I've seen in a while, because it really there was such like a warmth and authenticity, and like it didn't feel exploitative in how it tackled like teen sexuality. There's even like a bit of the female gaze in it as well, and it's the actress who plays the title character, Abby Ryder
How was she? How was
Forston.
she in the movie?
She was excellent in this
Okay, dude.
role,
I'm gonna
like
check it out
Oscar
because
worthy,
I'm a sucker for
honestly.
good acting, dude.
Yeah,
Um,
and Rachel
can we?
McAdams
Yeah, I was gonna say.
and Benny Safdie both play her religiously conflicted parents. Rachel McAdams is Christian. Benny Safdie's character is Jewish, and so that creates a bit of like tension because this character Margaret like is still unsure of what she believes at this point, even though she like talks to God throughout it, and so that becomes like a large part of the story, and it's just like a very funny and warm film that I think is pretty easy to
Is
recommend.
it a PG movie,
It's
Connor?
PG-13
Oh,
because
okay.
there is some like discussions of teen sexuality and puberty, particular. There's a major plot point involves the like growth of the character's breasts and like having to get a
Shit.
bra,
Okay.
and so like this film, it's definitely like a good one for younger folks to watch who are like just starting to learn about this stuff. And it discusses menstruation is also a particular plot point in the film. So just it's perfectly normal. Just to know it's perfectly normal,
No, and
and it's
also I
not.
have to say that
Yeah,
Edge of 17 impressed me, so I'm gonna see what this director cooks up next.
yes, this was a very good picture. And then I saw Showing Up by Kelly Reichardt, a particularly polarizing movie that I can see why it's polarizing. I really liked First Cow, her previous film. This film, Showing Up, though, I'll say right off the bat, it's not going to be accessible for many audiences. This is
If I'm not
this is kind
mistaken,
of
I
a
believe this movie had some walkouts at a film festival, and that
yeah. It
same
had
film festival had a Cronenberg movie showing. So
Crimes of the Future. Yeah, this was at the 2022 Cannes Film Festival. This it got good notices out of there because of familiarity with Reichardt's work. And I really like the first half of this film where um, Michelle Williams plays a sculptor who has a very cute cat, and she also has an art gallery show coming on. So she's basically working tirelessly on her sculptures, and there are many scenes where it like focuses for several minutes on her making these sculptures. Those were the parts that some people had trouble with. I didn't have as much trouble with that, but I feel like the film, besides that aspect of it, it felt like kind of dry and sometimes unfocused in a way that First Cow didn't feel. And I don't think it was really quite a misfire from this director, but I don't know if I'd recommend it either, because even me, somebody who likes slow paced films, I'm going to admit, like, I don't. This might have even been too like inaccessible and obscure and slow paced for me. Even like this
wow,
is not
yeah,
an
that's saying a
accessible
lot, dude.
movie,
Because you came out of Tar and was like, the pace
and
did
I was
not
blown
mess with
away
me
by
at
it.
all, and I was like, you got to admit that was a slower paced film than most movies that get made.
Yeah, and so Showing Up is a if you like Reichardt, then and or any of the cast and crew, like it's definitely worth seeing.
All right,
But
I
if
probably
you're
won't be checking that one out of the
if
new
you
ones, but good to
if you're
know.
not as into that stuff, then you're probably gonna be bored or end up hating the film. And the next film I saw was Suzume, the new film
And
by
is this the
the
last
dir-
movie you saw,
Mak-
Connor, out of the lot?
yeah.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Out of the newer releases, yes. Makoto Shinkai, the director of Your Name and Weathering with You, I adored Your Name. I actually watched this a few days before Suzume, and one of the greatest animated films of the 21st century. Maybe even the
I am
best.
a
It
little
was
more
a
mixed on that
stunning
movie, but I have
film.
to admit, on an animation standpoint, like Jesus, that is a
Yeah, I
great film.
I liked Suzume a lot, even though I didn't like it quite as much as Your Name, and it honestly like does have a couple of it's a pretty similar film thematically to Your Name, because it also tackles grief as well as trauma from the 2011 earthquake and tsunami in Tohoku, which seems to be a running theme throughout this director's work. But it's still like another one of the most stunning 2D animated films I've seen in a while, and it has a very just like I don't it's not quite as just soul crushingly sad as the ending of Your Name, but it got my emotions going.
It's good to know. Well,
It was a good film, and the last screening I actually just recently came out of was, again, as I mentioned, a digital screening of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
yeah, that kind of wraps like a bow on this episode because I don't know, dude. I feel like we went through so many different topics today, and I really like when we do that while also having a focus. And I just want to say this: thank you for making it this far throughout this, whole journey, because me and Connor started this about 2 months ago now, right?
Yeah,
And we're
I think 3
slowly
months actually.
slowly but surely some people are watching us, and that's thanks to you guys. So thank you for sticking it out. Please go follow us on either Instagram, TikTok, or Spotify, depending on what kind of form of media you like to consume. uh, anyway, thanks again for listening to us, and see you next time on Before Showtime with Connor and Marcelo.